Communication issues between spouses. This is the subject that we'll be talking about in today's video. Okay, so there's two situations here. One of them is poor listening skills and the other one is misunderstandings. The first one is poor listening skills. What does that look like? So one partner may actively not listen or may interrupt, making the other one feel unheard or undervalued. The second one is misunderstandings. Words or actions can be misinterpreted, leading to conflict when no harm was intended. Okay, so I want to hold up my hands and say I'm guilty of both. But the most important thing is, how do we rectify the situation? We'll be discussing that later on in the video. The first thing is this. Look, how many times have we been in conversations with our spouse when they are trying to say something and we're quick to respond, we're quick to interrupt? How do you think that comes across to them? How do you think it makes them feel? If we do this enough times, our partners could start withdrawing from us. They'll become emotionally disconnected. And when this happens, trust starts to deteriorate as well because of poor communication, poor listening skills. So what we need to do is we need to give them the time and the space to articulate whatever it is that they want to say and listen attentively. Listen to understand and learn, not listen to respond or react. That's the first thing. And misunderstandings, they occur in so many situations, conversations. And the key thing here is when misunderstandings happen, from personal experience, what I found that worked for me is to ask more questions for elaborating what it is that they're trying to tell me. Because by you asking more questions, it shows that you're attentively listening and you're intentionally seeking to understand where they're coming from. So it's important to ask questions, because by asking questions, you gain clarity and insight. So let's look at negative communication patterns. Using criticism, defensiveness, or sarcasm can damage the conversations. My gosh, how many of us out there are guilty of this? I certainly am, definitely. And the most important thing is this: when we don't like hearing something by the way it comes across, or the sound, or whatever it is that they're saying, we need to be careful of our reactions, our body language. Be mindful about these sort of things, our facial expressions particularly. What message is it sending off to our partner? How about being neutral? Whatever it is that they're saying, just be neutral. Do not show any facial expressions, like what I'm doing intentionally now. I'm not screwing my face. I'm not doing this. I'm not rolling my eyeballs up. I'm just looking at you directly, keeping my whole expressions neutral. The thing is this: when we don't like hearing something, this is the time that you need to be cautious of your facial expressions and body language, because all of a sudden it becomes defensive and it could be condescending. It can come across as condescending. So be mindful about these sort of things. Be mindful about what you say and how you come across. Hold back, restrain yourself. And what helps is making the intention when we come into a conversation is to learn. I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn. Not to provoke, not to explode, not to react. Just understand and learn. And this is a training that has to be incorporated over and over again into every single conversation. You're here to learn. The whole idea about relationships and communication is to learn. You're here to learn and to grow, to develop. And this is the only way, by coming in with that intention, that you enhance your relationships and your learning in terms of bettering your communication. So things to avoid. Avoid difficult conversations or shutting down during conflicts can cause issues to fester. So at the end of the day, problems are going to arise, and how you deal with them can make the difference between progress or deterioration in your relationships. It's not about avoiding conversations. It's about looking for ways of communicating more effectively. And I'll tell you something from personal experience. Communication is all linked to emotions. So the best time, I would say, to communicate, especially when it comes down to difficult conversations, is when you yourself are in a good mood, and this is about timing, and when your partner is in a good mood. You have to time it. There will be a time and a place where you need to speak. There'll be a time and a place when you need to listen. The time to listen is when your partner is feeling emotional, and you need to understand the cues. The emotions are through the tone of their voice. And that's the time not to speak, just to listen. And when they're in a better place, and when you are in a better place, that's a good time. That's an indication of a good time to speak and communicate, especially when it comes down to difficult conversations. And the second thing is, when you're dealing with difficult conversations, is when your partner is trying to speak, you must listen. And that means holding back from reacting to what they say, even if it's negative. So there's got to be emotional triggers for you to react, or your spouse to react towards you. Especially in stressful situations, partners may react impulsively or emotionally rather than calmly and thoughtfully. This is exactly what I was saying. This is about regulating your emotions, and communication is also about timing, especially in difficult conversations. Not anytime, any place, no, because the situation can be very explosive. So it's about timing. This can lead to heated arguments when both partners feel attacked or misunderstood. So, regulate your emotions first and foremost. Secondly, understand the situation that you are in. Is it really a good time to say whatever it is that I want to say? Number one. Secondly, is my partner feeling okay? Do they look okay, as if I can approach them to speak to them? Is my timing good? And these have to be thought out questions that you need to ask yourself. So, emotional triggers. Past unresolved issues or personal insecurities may influence how spouses react to present day conversations. The thing is this is what I've learned. In communication, it's about mannerisms, it's about regulating your emotions, it's about knowing when to listen, knowing when to shut up, and knowing how your partner is feeling, and last but not least is reading the situation that you are in. Like I said, about timing. All of these things have to be learned, because when you don't learn these things, you're going to impulsively react, you're going to respond, you're going to say things without thinking, and you're going to regret things. You're going to regret what you've said. So you have to train yourself in so many of these things that I've just mentioned. And when you educate yourself, you have better quality of relationships. This is what I'm talking about. And why is it important to have better quality relationships? Because the future is dependent upon your children, your family, your spouse, their future. And it's all to do with how you carry yourself, what you say, and how you communicate. And doesn't it make sense to work on communication skills? Especially when it comes down to timing, regulating your emotions, reading the situation, reading your partner, and so forth. So, first and foremost, restrain. Train yourself to restrain from speaking. Listen more. Just listen, first and foremost. And then work on the other skills that I've just mentioned. So, let's move on to differences of communication style, men versus women. Research suggests that men and women sometimes communicate differently, with men often focusing on problem solving and women on emotional expressions. So what does that tell you? That tells you need to identify when it is that they want solutions and when your partner just wants to express themselves. And the way to do that is just ask a question. And it sounds something like this. Babes, what do you want from this conversation? Do you want me to listen to you or give you a solution? And by asking this, at least you know how to operate. And this will solve a lot of misunderstandings. Now, when it comes down to conflict versus connection, some spouses may prefer to discuss problems directly conflict focused, while others seek connection through shared feelings and empathy. Connection focused. So there's two forms, conflict and connection. And this will depend on the temperament of your spouse. Sometimes they just don't know how to communicate. They don't know any other way. So the way they communicate ends up very explosive. They just don't know. They don't have the skills. Or you may not even have the skills to deal with that type of person. But really deep inside, all they want is connection. And all you want is to be able to connect and solve the situation. So what do you do in those types of situations? Learn skills. Ask questions. So let's look at general or cultural differences. Diverse cultural backgrounds or family experiences may impact how each partner views communication in the relationship. I want to bring something to your attention. There's two things here. There's an upbringing. Your upbringing and her upbringing are going to be completely different. Their communication style, your communication style, what you've been exposed to, what they have been exposed to, is the way you're going to communicate. It's all you know, because you've been brought up around that. So there are going to be differences, and it's about how you understand one another and try to bridge the gap of communication. And it goes back to the simple process of one listens, one talks, take it in turn. Listen and talk, listen and talk. That's the art of communication. That is the baseline of communication, is listen. Okay. And then when it's your turn to talk, you talk. And that means allowing your spouse to talk without interrupting, without condescending. And once they've finished, then your turn. Simple. The role of technology. Over-reliance on texting or social media is another aspect of communication. Technology can sometimes replace face-to-face communication, leading to misunderstandings or lack of emotional connection. Now, I tell you from personal experience, when I have texted my wife over the phone, there's so many misunderstandings. I've told her, for example, it's not what I was meaning to say. And the text can be so misunderstood. And that's why I've adopted for voice messages. I would recommend fathers who use the phone a lot, rather than text, voice message. It's completely different, because in text, the emotional element is missing. The sound of your voice. So many things can be picked up when you voice message over texting. Face-to-face is the best form of communication. And I would highly recommend, if you are using technology, to use voice messaging and video messaging over texting. Yeah. Texting, to me personally, comes across like it's a cowardly way of communicating, especially when it comes down to sensitive situations. Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but when I mean cowardly, don't use texting all the time. Vary your forms of communication. Sometimes use text, sometimes use voice messaging, video messaging, and face-to-face. But the best one is face-to-face. This is what I'm saying. Yeah. So then you have distractions. When it comes down to communicating, excessive phone use, watching TV or other distractions can interfere with meaningful communication. Fathers, be mindful of this. Be mindful of when your spouse is coming towards you to speak, or your child. Be cautious about the distractions. You scrolling or texting or on the phone during a time that they want to reach out to you and communicate with you. Put that thing down. Switch off the dim distraction and give them that focus. Because when you do this, you value them, and they won't feel undervalued. Yeah. When you start playing around with the phone in front of them, especially when they're trying to speak, and you seem distracted, it's very disrespectful, and you lose the quality of your relationship. with them. So be mindful about those things. And do you know the other thing? The other thing is as well is it has an impact on intimacy. Digital communication may lack the warmth and emotional depth in a person conversations provide. Nothing beats face-to-face conversations. That cannot be replaced, because when you're being intimate with your partner, for instance, you need that face-to-face. You need talk in that intimacy. And intimacy, I'm not just talking about physical touching. I'm talking about what comes before physical touching is the conversations, the emotional connection before the physical connection. Now imagine if you're being distracted, or you're condescending, or you're not giving your spouse the time to speak, or your child the time to speak. It can interrupt and have an impact on so many other areas of your relationship. This is what I'm talking about. So put those devices away. When you have conversations, make sure you are engaged. And when you're engaged in a conversation, it improves your intimacy, because it will lead to physical intimacy. This is what I'm saying, fathers. So strategies to improve communication. I've gone over a number of things to be mindful of and aware of. But just to recap on things: active listening. Focus on listening without interrupting. Reflect back on what your partner says to ensure understanding. This shows them that you care, and this shows them that they are understood. Use statements like I. Express your feelings without blaming. For example, I feel upset when, instead of you always. So you're shifting the whole communication back to you rather than blaming your spouse. Take breaks during heated discussions. My gosh, from personal experience, there's nothing quite like having a break to reflect, to calm yourself down, especially when things get too intense. Just take a break. Give your emotions a break, a little time off. And then when you feel better, then go back to communicating. But the difference is you're thought out, you're more calmer. Yeah. Avoid criticism and contempt. Replace criticism with constructive feedback. Avoid negative behaviors like sarcasm or contempt, which can erode trust. Come in with a mindset of understanding your partner. There's other things in a communication to be mindful of, and that's your non-verbal. Pay attention to body language, tone, and facial expressions, which can significantly affect how messages are received. There's one thing saying something to your partner, or your partner saying something to you, but how you're delivering that message with your body language, my gosh, it can either reinforce your message in a positive way, or can make your partner feel undermined and undervalued just by your body language. And this is through non-verbal. So pay attention to what you say and how you're coming across. And that could be through your tone of voice, your hand gestures, your facial expressions. Be mindful of these types of things. And the best way, what I found a good time to communicate is when you're feeling good. And not every time that you're going to be feeling good, but then it's all about timing. Then don't speak when you're not feeling good. Just listen. That's it. And when you're feeling better, then say whatever it is that you want to say. So what's the conclusion? The importance of communication. Strong communication equals a strong relationship. Building healthy communication habits is crucial for resolving conflicts, fostering intimacy, and strengthening the relationship. And this requires ongoing effort. Good communication requires practice, patience, and it's essential to have a continual process of learning, adapting, and supporting each other. This has to be ongoing, progressive communication. If you don't have the time, if you don't make the time to learn how to communicate more effectively, your relationship is at risk. Your relationships are going to be at risk with your child or your children and your spouse, and even others around you, whether it be at work or your extended family. Whatever type of people who you come in contact with to form a relationship, it's gonna diminish because of the fact that you're not working on your communication skills, and it's an ongoing process. But as long as you come in with the understanding to learn, to improve, you'll become better. The end.